Hey, this is Taylor from Count, and in this video we are going to be talking all about control cells. Control cells are a really powerful feature of the Count canvas. They let you basically create variables and use those as parameters in your analysis. You can inject those variables into your code, and you can also expose those variables to other people so that they can control the variables in your analysis as well. So we're going to go through the core concepts of control cells in this video, and to start with, I thought I would give an example of where control cells can come in handy. So this is a fun example we made a while back, and basically it asks you to put in your own details about your sex, your height, your weight, and use that to basically work out which kind of Olympic events you'd be most similar to the athletes that participate in those events, and which ones you would be the least similar to. So this is an example of a report. So this is all kind of visual based. A lot of the analysis that's going on is hidden away in the background. But you can imagine that these kind of variables could play very easily inside a big block of cells. If you were doing some data engineering and you had a parameter and you wanted to test different time frames, you could set that up as a control cell, switch that out, and then you can see your whole downstream effect change. So this is just one example, just so you can see the type of functionality we're talking about here. So let's go ahead and jump in then. So first off, we'll cover the different types of control cells we have available. So if we can zoom in here, we have a couple different input cells. This would be, you can just put in a number or some text. We have date pickers. You can select a date. We have binary guess-no toggles. We have sliders, which is super fun. We have multi-selects and single selects. So those are all the types of control cells. Now, a few things to note about control cells. You'll probably notice that they look quite similar to SQL cells and visual cells in that they have a name here, which is, again, something that we're going to be able to reference in our code. And we have a title, which is something that's more representative for other people or outside of the code. What does this cell mean to us? And so as such, control cells in particular have this case of them wanting to look one way when you have kind of production ready canvases and another way when you're playing with it and you're setting it up. So it's really important for control cells that you have this input, hide and unhide. So as you can see, the control cell looks quite different depending on if I have the input shown or hidden. So this is something to keep in mind, just especially for these single and multi-selects. When you're ready to show them to a user, you can hide a lot of this setup stuff that's here, all the input that goes into generating the drop-down list that's available. You can hide that and just focus on the drop-down options there. Cool. So how do control cells work? Well, the major concept that's really important to get for control cells is that under the hood, control cells are just tables. So to demonstrate what I mean, I'm just going to show you with one of these here. So if I say select star from number input, which is this cell here, we'll see I just get back one column named value with one value in there with 5,000. And if I update that to be 5, then this is going to update automatically. So this value is always pointing to whatever the variable is that you selected in this control cell. So if you can think of it as a table with a column called value, then it'll make a lot more sense to when we start connecting it into our actual queries. But that's a really fundamental concept to get around control cells. And if you ever wonder what's going on, then this trick of just saying, hey, let me select star from this control cell is really helpful to see what's in there. Yeah, so it's just a nice way to understand how exactly this all works. So without further ado, let's start getting into how control cells work. And we're going to do that by building a couple quick examples. And these are things that are really common ways that people use control cells. So we'll start with date range filters. This might be the most common way that we see people using control cells. And in this context, we've got a query with some time series data, and we've got it plotted here. So we've got time series from January 17 to February 2021. And maybe we want to play around with different time frames within that. So to start, we're going to go in here, which is how you can add a control cell. If you come down to the cell menu here, you can see all the different options. And we're going to pick the date picker, and we'll go ahead and drop it in. And I like to give this a name, so I'm going to call it start date. And like I mentioned, we give it a title and say select a start date. And we'll go ahead and pick a value to start with. So we know our data starts in 2017, so maybe we want to go March of 2018, feels like a good start date. Now in the date picker, There's loads of different options about how you can pick dates. There's a lot of different relative options, and there's even this custom one where you can even customize exactly how many days, weeks, months ago, or even in the future that it is. And so it's really powerful. I'm going to be really lame and just hit exact date, but you guys should have more fun with it. So we've got our cell, but as you can see, it's not hooked up to anything yet. If we change this, nothing's happening anywhere else. So when we want to connect this to our query, we need to add it to our SQL query here. So there's a couple ways to do that. The main way that I like to do it is just with a subquery. So I'll say where, because I'm going to be filtering on these rows, and day is the column I'm going to be filtering on. So I'm going to say it's greater than or equal to, and do a subquery, so I'll put it in parentheses, select value, because that's the name of our column in our control cell, from start date, which is the name of our control cell, and I'll run that. So you can see we've got our little line appearing showing that they're connected, and if we check out our graph, we can see we do indeed start in March 2018. So that's all working well, but if we wanted to do an end date, we can go ahead and do the same thing, but we can have a range. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this, so just make it quicker, and I'll make that end date, and select an end date, and I should make sure it's not the same day. We'll just go forward a year. Now when I connect this up, I'm going to show you the other way that you can connect these control cells to your query. So obviously one way is the subquery way. The other way is using cross joins. So if I cross join this start date, which in BigQuery I can just do with commas, end date, and then I can say day between start date dot value and end date value, and I don't have to write any subqueries. So again, this is personal preference about what kind of style you like in SQL, and also maybe what your database supports, but either way, if you can make sure that you think about these as tables, then this kind of logic hopefully frees you up to think about many more ways that you could use control cells. So on that, the next one we're going to talk about is single select and multi-selects. So these are, again, really popular ways that people use control cells. In this example here, we're looking at similar data, but just by artist. So as you can see, this is just too messy to look at for all of our different artists. So to start with, let's go ahead and pick, we'll do a multi-select, we can select a subset of artists that we care about. So when we do multi-select, you'll see that we have more input options here for these than any of the other ones. And that's because, there's a lot of different types of lists you might want to make. Now dynamic, that means we want it to connect to a data source. We want this list to change depending on if our source data changes. So that's what I want, because I want a list of artists that are available. So if a new artist all of a sudden shows up in our data set, I want that artist to automatically show up in this list here. So to do that, I'm going to go into dynamic. I'll pick the table where the artist column is. I'll click artist. And now in our drop down, we can see all of our artists. And we can select all, select none. We can I'm going to go ahead and select a handful of these to start with. And again, I'm going to give this a name. Select some artists. Cool. And now let's hook this up. So again, I can choose between doing subquery, or I could do cross join, but I'm just going to do a subquery for now, where artist in select value from artist selected. There. And one of the really important things about multi-selects in particular is that you want to use this in instead of an equals to. So most of the other ones you can just use an equals, but since this one is returning multiple values, you're going to have to use in. So if you do run into an error with this, and your database returns an error, please check that the in is in there. And now we can see we've updated, so now we can just see a subset of our artists. So this is starting to look a little bit easier to read, but we can take it a little bit further. So if we do a single select here, and basically what I want to do is, you can see kind of in the code here, I want to give a different aggregation option. So people can select if they want to see data daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly. And the way I want to do that, that's actually not going to be dynamic, that's going to be static. I want those options to always be there. It's not dependent on any data. Those are just options I always want there. So I'm going to go ahead and add my options in here. All right, and this is string. You can also do numbers in there if you want to. And I'll start with daily. And again, I'll give this a name. Now to hook this up, I am going to use a cross join for this one. So cross join on TF selected. And let me just go ahead and comment that back out. Now let's see. So yep, we've selected daily. If we now update that to weekly, we can see our chart update, and now we've got weekly data in here. And again, I could take this further. I could hide my inputs, and I could start to kind of resize these and lay them out how I want to, and start playing with the layouts, all that good stuff, so I can get to something like this, or laid out whatever way makes sense to you. But hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that's a good intro to control cells. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out or check the docs for more info, but that should be a good crash course in control cells. All right, until next time.